Welcome to Kiss and Chapters, where every story begins with a spark and ends with a swoon. If you love heart-fluttering romances, unexpected twists, and characters you'll root for, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep bringing you more sweet, emotional, and unforgettable stories. Let's fall in love with every chapter, together. Chapter 1. Silent Admiration. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with the quiet hum of lunchtime chatter, but Isla Torres barely noticed the noise. Her eyes were locked on a familiar figure across the room, Marco Mendez. Tall, effortlessly charming, and always with that slight frown of concentration, Marco was the kind of man people noticed the moment he walked in. He wasn't flashy or loud, but there was something about him. Something steady, calm, and untouchably kind. He worked in a prestigious architecture firm, his designs frequently featured in magazines Isla only read when she had the time. But it wasn't his success that caught her heart. It was the way he once helped an elderly man find his way to the cardiology department, patient and unhurried. The way he called his fiancée in the hospital lobby, his voice low and affectionate. The way he smiled when he saw someone he knew, warm and real. Isla had been in love with him for nearly 2 years now, silently, hopelessly. Their paths only crossed occasionally at the hospital, where she was finishing her clinical rotations as a nursing student. She'd always kept her distance, content with simply knowing he existed in the same world. She sipped her coffee, pretending to study the patient chart in front of her, but her gaze drifted back to him like a compass pulled north. He sat beside his fiancée, Celeste, the woman who seemed perfect in every way. Elegant, confident, worldly. She was talking animatedly and Marco laughed softly, eyes crinkling. Isla swallowed the ache in her throat and looked away. She had no right to feel this way. He wasn't hers, not even close. And yet, every glance, every soft smile he gave others, every small kindness he offered made her heart ache. She had built a small, secret world inside her where Marco existed not as someone she could love, but as someone she had already given her heart to. "Hey, Earth to Isla," her best friend May whispered, nudging her from across the table. Isla blinked. "What? You're staring again." "I wasn't." "You were." May grinned. "You always do. You know, at some point you might as well confess or just let it go." Isla smiled sadly. "He's engaged, May. There's nothing to confess." May leaned in, her voice dropping. "And yet you keep hoping." Isla didn't answer. What could she say? That she dreamed of him sometimes? That she imagined what it might feel like if he looked at her the way he looked at Celeste? She forced a breath through her nose and looked back down at her papers. "Let's focus. I have a quiz in 20 minutes. May sighed but didn't press further. She knew Isla well enough not to. But that afternoon, as Isla walked to her next class, her phone buzzed with a message from one of her instructors. Emergency need for nursing assistance. Private patient care requested for a long-term case. Temporary position. Interview scheduled the next day. She didn't think much of it. Not until that night when the news broke across every local channel. Marco Mendez, young architectural prodigy, involved in a car accident. Condition stable. Reports say he has suffered temporary blindness from head trauma. Recovery time uncertain. Isla stood frozen in her living room, the TV screen casting pale light across her shocked face. Blind. Her heart twisted. She reread the interview details her instructor had sent earlier. The patient's name had been withheld, but now she knew. Fate was cruel. Or maybe it was handing her a chance she didn't deserve. And for the first time in her life, Isla wondered what it would feel like if he looked at her even without seeing her. Chapter 2. The Man Behind the Curtain. The morning of the interview arrived with a gentle drizzle, the kind that blurred windows and soaked sleeves in seconds. Isla Torres stood at the gate of the Mendez estate, an elegant modern home tucked quietly at the edge of the city. She clutched her umbrella and file, her heart pounding louder than the rain. She still couldn't believe it. Marco Mendez. The man she had admired in secret. The man who once walked with such effortless confidence and now was trapped in darkness. She was about to step into his world, not as a stranger in passing but as his nurse. A woman in her early 50s opened the door. "You must be Miss Torres." "I'm Sonia, the housekeeper." Mr. Mendez's parents hired a private team for his care, but they wanted someone with quiet patience for this specific role. "Please come in." Isla smiled politely and stepped into the warm, well-lit house. Sonia led her into a room that overlooked a rain-drenched garden. The doctor will meet you shortly, but, she hesitated. You'll want to know he's been difficult lately. Refusing meals. Refusing help. Doesn't want to speak to anyone. I understand, Isla replied gently, though her stomach tightened. She knew heartbreak could do that to people. And she knew exactly who Marco was heartbroken over. Celeste. The woman who had left. She sat on the edge of a cream sofa, hands trembling just slightly. It wasn't long before a tall man in a white coat entered. Dr. Ramirez, Marco's attending neurologist. Miss Torres, he greeted with a brisk nod. You come highly recommended by your instructors. Thank you, sir. Marco has suffered temporary blindness due to optic nerve trauma. The vision is expected to return gradually, if he follows the recovery plan. But he's uncooperative. Isla nodded. I'm prepared for that. He eyed her curiously. You understand that this will be full-time work. You'll be living in. I understand. He paused. He may lash out. Not physically but emotionally. He's grieving more than his eyesight. Isla's fingers tightened around her file. I can handle it. The doctor gave her a long look, then finally said, very well. You start today. Isla's heart stuttered. No, so soon? But she nodded. Yes, sir. Sonia led her down a long hallway and stopped in front of a door. He's in there. Good luck, dear. Isla took a deep breath and knocked softly before entering. The room was dim despite the afternoon light outside. The curtains were drawn, the scent of antiseptic lingering faintly in the air. And there he was, sitting in a leather armchair near the window, motionless. Marco Mendez. Her heart clenched at the sight of him. He was thinner than she remembered, a shadow of the man who used to stride confidently into the hospital. A gauze bandage wrapped lightly around his head. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. I said I didn't want anyone in here, he said, his voice cold. I'm sorry, Isla replied softly, setting her bag down. I'm Isla. Your new nurse. I don't need a nurse. I need to be left alone. She took a quiet step closer. You don't have to talk. Just let me do my job. That's all. He was silent, but his jaw clenched. I'll be around if you need anything, she said gently. I'll give you your space. As she turned to leave, he said without looking at her, what's the point? Everyone's gone anyway. Isla's steps faltered. She didn't ask who he meant. She already knew. Instead, she turned back slightly. I'm not. That night, as the rain deepened and the house fell into silence, Isla sat just outside Marco's room, reviewing notes on his medications. Occasionally she heard him move, pace, curse under his breath. She didn't intrude. But when he finally fell asleep, his breathing even, his face slack with exhaustion, Isla quietly stepped in to check on him. She adjusted his blanket and turned to leave. He stirred, voice low, confused in sleep. Celeste? Isla froze. She didn't answer. Because in that moment she wasn't the woman he wanted. She was just the girl who loved him in silence, taking care of him from the shadows. And that had to be enough. Chapter 3. The Difficult Patient. Marco was not kind in the morning. He sat stiffly on the bed as Isla brought in his breakfast tray, his eyes blank and unseeing. Though the bandage had been removed days ago, his pupils still didn't respond to light. The neurologist said his sight might return gradually, but that recovery required patience, therapy, and cooperation. None of which Marco seemed willing to give. Eggs again, he muttered, voice low and bitter. You'd think with all the money in this house we could afford something edible. Isla set the tray on the bedside table. The doctor approved a light diet. We can request something different for lunch if you prefer. I don't prefer anything, he said flatly. Just leave it there and get out. She didn't move. I said, you need to eat, Mr. Mendez. If you don't, your blood sugar drops and your medications won't work properly. He scoffed. Don't lecture me. You're just another temporary nurse. Her hands stilled for a moment, but she kept her tone calm. I'm here as long as you need me. Well, I don't. Isla sighed softly. Then I'll just be the shadow you ignore. Marco turned his head slightly as if trying to place her voice. You're not the same one from yesterday. Yes, I am. You sound different. I guess I was more patient yesterday, she said quietly. His lips curled in something close to a smirk, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe you're braver today. Maybe, Isla thought, or maybe my heart is just more used to breaking. She stepped forward to guide his hand to the tray, but he pulled back. I can do it. But as he fumbled for the edge of the tray, nearly tipping the cup of juice, Isla gently steadied it. Let me help. He paused, hand hovering, then finally let her wrap his fingers around the spoon. I don't need pity, he muttered, taking a clumsy bite. I'm not giving you any, she replied. You're not a man to be pitied. There was a beat of silence. What's your name again? Isla. He repeated it under his breath like he was trying to place it. You don't sound like the others. I'm not like the others. He ate in silence after that. Slower, but at least he was eating. Later that afternoon, Isla joined Sonia in the living room to review Marco's therapy schedule. From the hallway she could hear a crash, then a sharp curse. She rushed back into the bedroom to find a broken glass on the floor and Marco sitting on the edge of the bed, fists clenched. I tried to walk to the bathroom, he said tightly. Didn't even make it 5 steps. Isla knelt to pick up the shards. You should have called me. I don't want to need anyone. She looked up at him. Everyone needs someone, Marco. He flinched, hearing his name from her lips for the first time. She finished cleaning the mess and gently helped him up. He resisted at first but finally gave in to her steady hands. It's humiliating, he muttered as they walked slowly together. It's healing, she corrected. Let it happen. Once he was settled again, she sat in the corner of the room and wrote in her notes, pretending not to watch him. But her heart was full of silent things. He was broken, yes, but not just from the accident. He was grieving the loss of his independence, his career, and most of all her. Celeste. Isla saw it in the way he touched his phone, scrolling through old voicemails, waiting for a message that wouldn't come. She saw it in the way he sat in silence at night, his fingers curled like he was holding a memory. And Isla, she was the invisible one. The one who cooked his meals, measured his medication, steadied him when he stumbled. He couldn't see her, but he didn't need to. She would love him quietly. Even if he never looked back. Chapter 4. Pieces of Him. It had been 3 weeks since Isla Torres became Marco Mendez's live-in nurse. In that time she had memorized his every pattern. The way he gripped the edge of the bed before swinging his legs over in the morning, the subtle tension in his jaw when the headaches returned, and the flicker of pain that passed over his face whenever someone mentioned Celeste's name. She never said it herself. But sometimes Marco did. She's probably moved on already, he muttered one rainy evening as she adjusted the pillow behind his back. Isla paused, the pillowcase tight between her fingers. She hasn't called? He gave a hollow laugh. No. She left right after the accident. Said she couldn't watch me like this. Said she needed space. Isla's chest tightened. I'm sorry. You don't have to be, he said bitterly. It was going to happen eventually. She sat down in the chair near the bed, fingers nervously lacing together. Why do you say that? Because people don't stay when it gets hard. Not in real life. I'm still here. The words left her lips before she could stop them. Marco didn't respond at first, just turned his face toward the ceiling. Then he whispered, You don't even know me. But I do, Isla thought. I know how you like your coffee dark with 1 sugar. I know you hum when you're trying to solve a problem. I know you carry your pain like a silent weight on your shoulders. I know enough, she said gently. He didn't answer. Instead he leaned back against the pillow and closed his eyes. His hand, resting loosely on the blanket, twitched like he was reaching for something. Someone. Isla didn't take it. Instead she whispered, Good night, and stood to leave. The next day Marco was in a better mood, relatively. He asked for music. Classical, soft, something to fill the silence. I used to design better when I listened to Debussy, he said. Or Chopin. It helped me think. Isla played a soft piano piece from her phone and watched him relax for the first time in days. His fingers tapped the armrest gently, like he was trying to sketch invisible lines in the air. You miss it, she said. I miss everything, he replied. But designing, that was mine. It made sense. It was the only time I felt like I could control something. His voice broke slightly and Isla swallowed the urge to walk over, to press his hand between hers, to tell him it was okay to fall apart. But she didn't. She stayed in the corner and listened just like always. Celeste never really liked my work, he said suddenly. Isla blinked. Really? She said I cared more about my buildings than I did about her. Maybe she was right. Or maybe she didn't understand how much your work meant to you. He turned toward her voice. You talk like you know me. Isla hesitated. Maybe I do. That night, after he had fallen asleep, Isla stayed in the room longer than usual. She stood beside the window, watching the reflection of his sleeping form in the glass. He looked so peaceful there, finally unguarded, lips slightly parted in rest. He was still healing, inside and out, but this was the version of him she loved the most. Vulnerable. She had told herself that this arrangement was temporary. That once he regained his sight she would walk away like she was never here. But with each day, each word he spoke, each smile she pulled from him with quiet effort, she started to wonder. Would he ever look at her the same way he once looked at Celeste? Would he ever see her at all? Chapter 5. A fragile bond. The air inside the Mendez home had shifted. It was subtle, like the first breeze before a storm. Marco had stopped snapping at Isla. He even let her guide him during his short walks around the garden patio. Sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, he smiled at the sound of bird song or the scent of jasmine. And sometimes he asked about her. Where are you from? He asked one morning as she buttoned his cuff, an act he used to resist but now tolerated. Batangas, Isla said. A small town. Lots of mango trees and long afternoons. Huh, he said. Sounds peaceful. It was. I miss it sometimes. He was quiet for a moment, then said, You don't talk much about yourself. I'm not the one recovering, she replied, lips curling slightly. But the truth was she didn't want to make it about her. If she talked too much, he might hear the feelings tucked between her words. She couldn't risk that. That afternoon, Marco was more restless than usual. He sat on the edge of his bed, palms clenched. I want to try walking without support. Isla looked up from the corner. That's not a good idea yet. Your balance is still. I said I want to try. She studied him, his stubborn jaw, the tension in his shoulders. The Marco she used to admire from afar was slowly returning. But that same Marco had never looked at her the way this one did. Not with curiosity. Not with quiet trust. She sighed. Hey. But I'll be beside you. No arguments. He stood shaky at first. Isla slipped an arm lightly around his back, the contact sending a sharp flutter through her chest. They moved slowly, step by step across the hallway. He stumbled once. He caught him. His hand tightened around hers reflexively. Sorry, he muttered. It's all right. He stopped. Why are you always so calm? Because someone has to be, she whispered. He turned his head slightly. You really don't pity me? No. Then why are you still here? The question hung in the air. Isla felt it in her chest like a drumbeat. Because I love you. But she said, because I care. And because I said I would be. He was silent again. Then he said something that nearly made her knees buckle. You feel safe. That night, Isla found herself unable to sleep. She sat by the window in her small guest room, knees drawn up, watching the stars blink through a thin veil of clouds. Her heart was heavy with unsaid things. Every day she spent by Marco's side made it harder to keep the truth in. She didn't expect him to love her. Not like he loved Celeste. But being this close, hearing his voice, touching his hands, sharing moments of silence, it made it harder to let go. She remembered the exact moment she fell in love with him. It was during one of her first rotations, back when he visited the hospital for a community project. He had spoken to a young child with cancer, kneeling down to her level, building her a model house from paper and glue. Isla had watched from the hallway as he laughed with the little girl, so gentle, so human. He hadn't known she was there. He still didn't know she'd loved him since that day. She rested her head against the glass. Outside, a breeze whispered through the trees. Inside, her heart whispered a quiet truth. She was falling deeper every day, and the end was coming closer than she dared to admit. Chapter 6. Light Returns. The first time Marco saw a flicker of light, it came unexpectedly. He was standing by the window with Isla beside him, her voice gently describing the sky, like she always did during their afternoon walks. Cloudy today, she murmured. But the sun is trying to break through. He blinked and caught something, just a pale blur. His breath hitched. Wait, he said, his hand lifting. There's light. Isla turned to him, her heart racing. You see it? A little. His voice trembled with disbelief. It's faint. But it's there. She smiled, her throat tightening with emotion. That's good, Marco. That's very good. He nodded slowly, dazed. It's like staring through fog. Every day after that, the world became a little clearer for him. The recovery was steady. Shadows became shapes. Light became definition. Within weeks, he could walk without support, recognizing objects at close range. Isla was there every step of the way, her presence like a quiet anchor. She helped him read again, walked with him in the garden, brought him art books filled with architectural photography. She never once let her emotions slip, though her heart felt heavier with each passing day. As he was healing, and she was running out of time. One evening, as she handed him a fresh towel before his shower, Marco caught her wrist. Isla, he said softly. I saw your reflection this morning. She froze. In the mirror, he added. Just for a second. You were standing behind me. Oh. He didn't let go. You're not what I imagined. She forced a small smile. Disappointed. He shook his head slowly. No. Just surprised. You're not like Celeste. Her heart skipped. That's probably a good thing. He let out a quiet laugh. Yeah. I think it is. For a moment Isla dared to hope. But hope shattered 2 days later. Celeste returned. Isla had just finished updating Marco's medication chart when she heard the front door open. Then Sonia's excited voice rang through the house. Marco. She's here. Isla turned cold. Celeste walked in like nothing had changed. Elegant in a cream dress, heels clicking softly on the floor. Her perfume filled the room before she even spoke. Marco stood up stunned. Celeste? Isla stood frozen by the doorway, invisible. Celeste rushed to him, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle it. I should have been here, Marco. Please forgive me. He didn't respond right away. Isla couldn't watch. She slipped out quietly, her heart pounding in her ears. Later that night, after Celeste had been shown to the guest room, Isla stood alone in the hallway, staring at the closed door to Marco's room. He knew. It was time. She packed the next morning without a word. There was no dramatic goodbye. No confession. No begging for him to choose her. She folded her uniform neatly, left her nurse's ID on the dresser, and took one last look at the room where she had fallen even more in love with a man who never truly saw her. As she walked down the hallway, Sonia spotted her. You're leaving? The older woman asked, surprised. Isla nodded, forcing a smile. My job is done. She walked out into the warm morning light, her chest hollow. Marco was healing. He was seeing again. But she had never felt more invisible. Chapter 7, Vanishing Point. For the first time in months, Marco Mendez could see the sunrise. He stood by the window in the early morning light, watching gold and blush spill across the sky. The soft warmth touched the edges of his world again, but something felt missing. He turned his head toward the hallway. Isla, he called out. Silence. Only the quiet hum of the house answered. He waited a moment longer before walking to the kitchen. Sonia looked up from preparing breakfast and smiled faintly. She's gone, she said gently. Left early this morning. Marco blinked. Gone. She packed everything. Said she was finished. That her work here was done. His brows furrowed. She didn't even say goodbye? Sonia paused. Maybe she didn't want to make it harder, for either of you. That day Marco found himself reaching for familiar things. The teacup Isla used to hand him each morning. The folded towel she always left by the sink. The subtle scent of lavender she wore without realizing it. The house felt colder now. Celeste returned to the kitchen, setting her phone on the table. I rescheduled my flight. I think I'll stay another week. Marco didn't respond. She looked at him closely. Is everything all right? He forced a smile. Yeah. Just tired. But he wasn't tired. He was restless. He found himself walking back to the room Isla had stayed in. The bed was neatly made, no trace of her scent or warmth left behind. On the nightstand sat a folded piece of paper with no name. Just a short note in careful handwriting. Thank you for letting me walk beside you for a while. You won't remember me, but I'll remember you. It. He stared at the initials. He read the note again. And again. And again. Something inside him cracked. He sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, gripping the paper. He had thought Celeste's return would bring peace. He had told himself she was the woman he loved, the one he had waited for. But Isla had been the one who stayed, the one who listened, the one who quietly carried his pain without ever asking for anything in return. He hadn't seen her. Not really. And now, she was gone. Time moved forward. Celeste stayed for a few more days but left when she realized Marco was drifting. He smiled, thanked her for coming back, but they both knew the threads between them had frayed. She changed you, Celeste said before leaving. Whoever she was. Marco didn't deny it. After she left, he tried to find Isla. He contacted the agency, the hospital, even old instructors. But no one had information. She had transferred her final requirements quietly, vanished from her dorm, and hadn't left a forwarding address. She was a ghost. A name in a file. But in Marco's mind she was more than that. She was the voice that calmed him in the dark. The hands that steadied him when he stumbled. The girl who never asked him to love her, only to let her stay. And he had let her go without even knowing her favorite color. Chapter 8, 5 years later. Dr. Isla Torres adjusted her coat as she stepped into the brightly lit halls of St. Gabriel Medical Center. The name on her ID badge felt heavier today, not because it was new but because she was finally wearing it in the very hospital where everything began and ended. 5 years. 5 years since she walked away from Marco Mendez without a goodbye. 5 years since she buried her love beneath quiet smiles and medical textbooks. Now she was no longer the invisible nurse in the shadows. She was Dr. Torres, respected, accomplished, and distant. The kind of woman who kept her heart tucked tightly behind a wall of professionalism. Dr. Torres? She turned to see Dr. Alvarez, the head of the surgical department, offering a polite smile. "You're just in time," he said. "We're doing a collaboration with a local wellness foundation on post-trauma recovery housing. You're assigned to a patient consult with their lead architect." "All right," she replied coolly, following him down the corridor. But nothing could have prepared her for who was sitting in the conference room. Marco Mendez. He was facing the window, sunlight casting soft shadows over his chiseled profile. A few lines now framed his eyes. His hair was a little shorter. Still handsome. Still impossibly calm. He turned at the sound of their footsteps. And their eyes met. Isla froze. So did he. "Marco," Dr. Alvarez greeted warmly. "This is Dr. Isla Torres. She'll be in charge of patient wellness integration for the housing units." Marco's gaze didn't leave hers. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Maybe even regret. Dr. Alvarez glanced between them, sensing the tension. "I'll give you two a moment." When they were alone, silence fell like a curtain. Marco finally spoke. "I've been looking for you." Isla's throat tightened but she kept her voice even. "You're looking well." He gave a soft laugh. "I can see now." "I know." He stepped closer. 5 years, Isla." She met his gaze. "And yet you've done just fine." "That's not true," he said, voice low. "You left. You didn't ask me to stay." He flinched. "I didn't know what you meant to me until it was too late." Isla looked away. "You had Celeste. I had history," he said. "But you were the one who sat with me when I couldn't see. You were the one who stayed even when I made it impossible. Then why didn't you stop me?" "I didn't see you." Her breath hitched. "Not just with my eyes," he added. "With everything else too. I didn't see who you were, how you held me together. How I looked forward to your voice, your quiet presence. I thought you were just a nurse doing her job, and by the time I realized you weren't, you were gone." Isla swallowed hard. "We're different people now, Marco." "Are we?" he asked gently. "Because I've spent every day wondering how I could have let you leave without asking you to stay." Her heart was thundering. He took another step forward. "Tell me it didn't mean anything to you. Those nights, those mornings, all the unspoken moments. Tell me you didn't feel it too." Isla opened her mouth. But the words didn't come. Because she had felt it. She had never stopped. Chapter 9. When You See Me. Isla Torres stood frozen. The years she had spent building walls around her heart were crumbling, brick by fragile brick, under the weight of Marco's gaze. I didn't come here to reopen the past, she said at last, voice low. I'm just doing my job. Marco smiled sadly. And I'm not here to make this harder. But Isla, I never stopped looking for you. She swallowed hard. I made sure you couldn't find me. Why? He asked gently. Because I couldn't stay in a world where you'd go back to someone else. Where everything I felt was invisible again. Marco looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her. I thought I wanted Celeste back, he admitted. But when she came I realized something. She left when I was at my lowest. You stayed. Isla looked away. That's not love, Marco. That's gratitude. No, he said firmly, stepping closer. Gratitude is temporary. What I felt, what I still feel, didn't fade. It followed me through every project, every city, every sleepless night. She turned back to him, her voice cracking. You never even knew me. I knew your voice before I ever saw your face, he said. It's the one thing I missed when I got my sight back. Your voice. Calm, patient, kind. It haunted me. I didn't even know your name until I found that note. Isla's lips trembled. I didn't think you'd care. He stepped close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. I cared. I still do. A long silence fell between them. Then Marco reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, carefully folded note. The very one she left behind all those years ago. Thank you for letting me walk beside you for a while. You won't remember me, but I'll remember you. He looked into her eyes. You thought I'd forget you, Isla. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Her heart swelled, painfully full. I told myself I moved on, she whispered. That it was just something fleeting. But I lied. I loved you, Marco. I loved you when you couldn't even see me. I see you now, he said softly, and I wish I had sooner. Outside the conference room, the city moved on. Cars passing, nurses walking the halls, pages turning in 1,000 patient files. But inside, Isla's world stood still. The man she had loved in silence was standing in front of her. And this time he wasn't looking past her. He was looking at her. Seeing her. Choosing her. Chapter 10, Finally Yours. The weeks that followed their reunion were cautious. Isla kept her distance at first, maintaining a strictly professional air whenever their paths crossed at the hospital. But Marco, he didn't let go so easily this time. He brought her coffee every morning, remembering exactly how she liked it, black with a touch of vanilla. He left architectural sketches on her desk, playful ones with little notes scribbled in the corners. Thought you'd like this design. Let me know if it passes the Dr. Torres wellness test. And slowly Isla's walls began to crack. One evening she found herself sitting beside him on a bench outside the hospital, watching the city glow against the soft purple twilight. I used to dream about this, Marco said, breaking the silence. About what? Seeing you again. Hearing you laugh. Telling you all the things I should have said back then. Isla looked away. You don't have to make up for anything, Marco. He gently took her hand. But I want to. She didn't pull away. I was blind in more ways than one, he said softly. And it took losing you to understand the kind of love that stays even when things fall apart. Tears pricked her eyes. I didn't stay for love, Marco. I stayed because I couldn't leave you. He smiled. And that's exactly why I fell for you. Her breath caught. The words lingered between them. You, what? She whispered. I fell in love with you, Isla, he said without hesitation. Back when I was bitter and broken and blind to everything but my own pain, you were the one who saw me. Not for what I lost but for who I was. Tears slipped down her cheeks. And I never told you, he continued, brushing her hand with his thumb. But every day without you has felt like a silence I couldn't escape. You were my calm in the dark. And I want to be that for you now. Isla's lips parted, trembling. I thought I missed my chance, she whispered. You didn't, he said. Not this time. She looked at him, really looked, into the same eyes she had once watched from afar, now full of emotion and certainty. Then she leaned in slowly, her heart racing, and kissed him. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was soft. Full of everything left unsaid for 4 long years. And when they pulled away, Marco rested his forehead against hers. You're not invisible anymore, Isla Torres, he murmured. She smiled through her tears. I never wanted to be. I just wanted to be yours. He kissed her again, this time with everything in him. And at last she let herself believe that this time she could be. Bonus epilogue. A house with warm light. 2 years later. The house stood at the edge of a quiet town, modern yet cozy, surrounded by gentle hills and blooming sunflowers. Marco Mendez stood on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the wind sway through Isla's herb garden. Every window in the house glowed with soft yellow light. It was the very first design he completed after their reunion, his first project inspired not by grandeur but by warmth. A home filled with quiet love. Inside, Isla sat on the couch in the reading nook, curled up with a thick novel and a little bundle of softness asleep on her shoulder. Their son, Video, 3 months old, with his mother's lashes and his father's quiet temperament. Marco stepped in quietly, careful not to wake the baby. He leaned down to press a soft kiss to Isla's head. "He's finally out," he whispered. Isla smiled sleepily. "For now. He likes jazz more than lullabies, apparently." Marco chuckled, settling beside her. "That's my boy." They sat there in silence for a while, tangled in warmth and peace. There was no pain now, no distance. Only shared glances, quiet laughter, and the kind of love that had been tested, and had endured. "Do you ever think about that night?" Isla asked softly. "The one where you left?" She nodded. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his voice gentle. "I think about it all the time. Because it taught me something." "What?" "That love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the one who stays silent, who stays close, who loves you quietly until you're strong enough to love them back." She blinked away sudden tears. "Took you long enough." He smiled. "But I got here. To you." Outside, the wind blew gently. Inside, their baby stirred, then settled again in his mother's arms. And in the house Marco built for the woman who once loved him in silence, they built a life full of music, warmth, and second chances.